It's a space that punch. You might hear this from one of us. Is rich. It's ever changing, and it's very, very present with frogs. It feels like it's the size of a football field. The sound here it's in quad, and a kind of magical thing. I had this. So Paul Geluso, who's worked for Harvestworks, where we're offered to do the spatialization. So I gave him sets of mid-side stereo files, and it was so last minute. I wish I could ask him to move since it was gradually. I can't get in any access to the last minute. And then I got here 2 days ago, and Paul said, I have this great idea. Everything is slowly revolving. So you might not feel it, but the idea is that these different stereo recordings are moving directly under and other sounds. They're being, but it's, I think, what it's like to be there with life forms constantly voicing, constantly changing, sometimes silent. There's maybe 2 moments of this really wonderful owl, but every time I've been for the flare, it sounds different, but the frogs always sound very issue. Okay, so Ash,
That's something else. I study English. We went on rural artist residence in Mount Lake Electrical Station several years ago. And that field station is really good to me. Specifically, it's on the border of Virginia and West Virginia, close to where I grew up. And my work as a visual artist focuses on trying to understand the sensory world of other regions. I spend a lot of time trying to listen for all kinds of small beings that are like, celebrating the vibrancy of small creatures and the noise to letting all understanding of language as to dimension. And Stephen and Meredith and I put together after our residency and formed the Sensei Lab. And I reached out to them partly as kind of a selfish desire, just spend more time with them and learn them. Seeing that they all perceive the world is by somewhat random intensity, but through the different lenses, able to each other things. So I'll never forget exploring this event and the physical experience and its brilliance. It showed me how to lose contact with lakes to listen to plants and small insect food settlement, which actually sounded like pronouncers of the words. He showed me how to use the equipment for the very field. And I'll always remember the 20 hours exploring a decaying tree called the undershoot tree. They both are both but at the same time trying to inhabit the world of other beings, and it's been so much fun to create together. We started the Sensing Lab without a clear plan or a project, just aiming to learn from each other and to share with each other. We decided to make a film that became the reformer, mostly because it feels as influenced, or sound. But I feel incredibly blessed. So basically, I got to spend 4 nights in ponds surrounded by frogs, searching for the frogs, human body to become aquatic. Process had challenges. There was eating mud, muscles perfect, crouching for hours. And while Meredith filmed and Stephen recorded the sounds of the frogs, I moved slowly through the pond, sometimes with the rain, which was the most hard, searching for frogs and trying to imagine what it would feel like to be one of them. Hitting swarms of insects in my headlamps, and seeing water scorpions in the deep and watching creatures I could not identify. Watching the light of the water and feeling the cold wind. So it was a mundane experience in some ways, so it's people that made it in the pond at night, but completely transformative and magical. It really felt like slipping into another world. And one of my favorite words is Umwelt, which in German means environment, but in the field of ecology means the sensory world of the being. I feel really lucky to overlap with the Umwelt from it. And then during the day, when we're in filming, I made some stages and field notes documenting the whole experience, which is in this room. So I feel so lucky to be able to work with these 2 amazing artists, with scientists and students, and at the field taken, and everyone at Harvestworks, especially Carol, and of course the frogs. I've always believed in the importance of sharing small stories. So thank you for joining us and trying to understand what it might feel like we found a green frog in a small pond.
So my role in this particular piece was to be the camera. And just to talk a little bit about the moment when we decided that we were going to make a film, because as Ash and Stephen have laid out, we felt there was some kind of affinity, but didn't know what exactly we were together. And it's kind of an interesting moment to think, we're going to make something, but we have no idea what. And so we were sort of foraging around in our own minds for a few days, thinking about how we do something and exploring the landscape. But we were all drawn to this particular mysterious event that would happen at night, which is we go out back to listen to the frogs because they're so wonderful about it. But we look out of the pond and then these kind of mysterious lights running through the trees. And it was beautiful and a little eerie, like you weren't really sure if this was a crime scene or just some people, having a night cloud hunt, and it turned out to be the latter. We were drawn in by this kind of mystery, investigated, learned that it was graduate students who were hunting for frogs, which we were glad to learn that they were being studied and then eventually returned to the pond. And they would do it methodically and go clockwise around the pond, just searching. And as they search, it would illuminate different parts of the environment. And so we thought, all right, let's make a film. And so what you're seeing here is half a record of scientists, in fact, circling the pond, and half Ash's performance of looking for frogs, but also, I think, performing being you, which is to say, by investigating the world at a very close and intimate level. For me, I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I'm more of an animator, and so but I have been creating work for the past 5 or so years where I've been going out at night and projecting animations into the landscape. And so this kind of hour being out at that time and trying to document that in a way became preparation for documenting these scientists creating their own animation and for Ash and just more Twilight term much friendlier conditions for filming than True Night. And to my mind, there's a lot of art in this world that's about some kind of religious culture or celebrating power in some way. And I thought it was really interesting to try to create a world that doesn't really celebrate science, but like follows the aesthetics of science, which is to say that it's a repeated act, it was thorough, it was methodical. As one scientist said when we told him we were out there filming, and she's like, wow, it's really cool that you think that this is beautiful. Like, I think of it, this is my work. Like, I have to go get in the pond every night and hunt for frogs. But for me, there was something about creating like an aesthetics of science, especially at a time when it feels like that mode of understanding the world, of kind of testing and returning to something and trying to ascertain something feels less in focus. So it felt especially to do that. And then also I really felt like I was kind of trying to absorb the ethos of my two music collaborators, and in particular, as I said, in the watch of the way that Ash perceives the world, I definitely see that in the paintings. The next room is kind of incredible close attunement to the unnoticed world. And then Stephen's incredible close patience and going out and waiting for the moment where conditions were right to gather something. It's sort of part of the recording, both of which were new moments for me. So it was really interesting to try to create something visual that represented each of their music.
The sounds mostly are achieved because we were out recording and most of the sounds I did beforehand because there was no biologist units having a party. There was or screaming Princess Bride. And we made sound as we followed Ash and communications. So, but there's a mixture of time and place. And ideally, we're going to bring something that's very special to us and to others, and the shared experience of collaborating listening to each other, watching for each other, and trying to somehow make that into a thing that can be shared. And again, this is the first time it's all shown publicly. Everything Meredith said that is in this version is 2 channels, but can be more channels of video, probably definitely 2 more channels of audio, but like it's modular, so future versions have different shapes or have a ceiling or projection of the floors or the sides, but all of you know, to just see if I can use out. We reached out to Carol and said, hey, can this new fun? She's hey, yes. And so here you are.
What month was it made?
July, right? It was
Last week of June.
Yeah. And just because Ash mentioned the contact mics and accelerometers on the plants. Before I met these 2, I've been a scientist who's based in St. Louis, and she does recordings of substrate or insect vocalizations or calls that are sent through the body of certain insects and only heard, not heard here, only heard through other kinds of surface amplification. And I'd given a talk one night about my World Trade Center, which seems about that way, somewhere in the Trade Center. 2 days later, Casey Feller family, Dr. Casey Feller family, talked about the insects and she listens to that are only heard through surfaces, and they're like, hey, I should do something. And so I've had a relationship with her, a creative relationship, a scientific relationship since 2014. So it's a beautiful thing when you go someplace and making friends, friends of teachers.
What's the nearest town? It's a pond, right?
Yeah, it's Pembroke, Virginia, and it's not so far from Blacksburg. It's the nearest city. Or is it for Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You said it was West Virginia.
Virginia, like right on the border. It's actually in Virginia, but it's on floating green.
In other words, follow the line and you'll find it.
Yeah.
And the nearest town is Pembroke.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then
That's where you get gas.
yeah, down the hill is where they make Dirty Dancing. And right by that is where John Cage is really gorgeous painting for the mountain that were shot with great casts. And
Down like this one.
it's where John Cage made these gorgeous paintings and watercolors at the Mountain Lake Workshop, I think is what it's called. There's a fellow, Ray Cass, who's still alive. He facilitated that residency with Cage.
Is the pond spring fed or is it just one off down the mountain?
I think it's spring fed, but it's artificially created because there's only 2 natural lakes in Virginia. One of which is Mountain Lake, which is just down the road from the biological station, and that's where the lodge is, and that's where Dirty Dancing is. It's filmed, so you can go and see some familiar sites of that movie. But the lake itself is no longer there because it has a naturally draining well at the bottom. So every 30 years or so, basically drains out. It becomes like a lead pit.
Disappears.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating area.
But there's the lodge there is a little touristy, but it's a gorgeous place to stay. And where we went, if you're in artists and you look up Art Lab, all one word, ARTLAB, there is a call every year. They feed you, they ring a bell, and scientists, artists, and it's a really lovely place to spend 2 weeks.
And you can follow scientists around
Yeah.
there in the field.
Oh yeah.
All of these projects, experimental projects in the woods that you can go on along and you encounter a project where
Civilized is
that with people.
Yeah.
Where is Cooley Trail?
Yes.
Yeah. They put a rattlesnake in my room. I thought I would like to record it. They loaned us fungus beetles just to hang out with.
Have to make work of.
Yeah. Or you do it. Or you do it. Yeah.
So mostly there's a lot of scientists are studying fungus beetles and kind of like one of the main projects. And there's a scientist studying wood roaches and a scientist studying Many scientists study frogs, and they're just sort of sitting in frogs, poison bee.
Yeah, I'm going to study about the nectar of poison bee flies. The scientists studying the frogs were studying a certain kind of frog mosquito parasitic relationship. There's a kind of mosquito that, we think of them as being our personal plague, but there's like ones that are attached to different kinds of creatures, and there's ones that just eat frogs. And so it's sort of about how frogs sense, actually, speaking of sensing, how frogs sense these mosquitoes.
Whether they dive under the water and they sense them.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I think it changes year to year because like the first year I went and I met this scientist who was very straightforward. She was really into leaf hoppers, tree hoppers. Like everybody, it's very much like being with artists where everybody has their like odd little thing, niche, exactly, I would say that. And that's why I think we found were accepting of us. The rumor is that when the scientists were told that artists were going to start coming with this, like, they're going to take from us. And then there was successful stories and people started to see an exchange. And we don't stand that long there. But I think if we follow, at least our group approach it with so much respect and curiosity, and you say with something breakfast, you say, doing something with ants or whatever, and you're like, it's only
Interested in just like connecting with other beings and the desire to connect and understand other beings. I think it's what really is why I'm really interested in scientists and their focus on one specific being for a long period of time. But hey, some of the investigations are kind of absurd. Like, I know we'll never actually be able to connect with the rock. I'll also never actually be able to connect with frog or for fungus below.
They never say never.
But I keep trying, and scientists keep trying, and it's just an attempt to understand and understand others. So it's been a lot of time just staring at rocks and reading films of rocks. And
It raises the question of what is being.
what's it?
What is?
Might have to go outside for that.
yeah.
So you're out there about $100 million.
Well, I was a bit I was exploring. I saw it. Actually, I think that was that was interesting. We went out there for hours and hours and hours. I didn't see a frog. Very awesome. To see a frog. So there's some. Then we actually followed the scientists around, and they told us how to find frogs. How they were able to.
They share their secrets.
I do have video footage of the scientists capturing the frog, and we, at some point, we had an underwater camera that looked for our scientists along this. And I didn't realize this at first when after viewing the footage, there's like a polywog, which is sort of in between the tadpole and the frog, suddenly appeared on the screen. And because it was gigantic, and I thought if I put that thing in here, it's going to totally. So
It's a dirt film.
So there are no frogs on film, but we did. The scientists are quite adept at catching them. They just and pull it out and
The crabs.
plastic bag.
Crabs.
Yeah.
From my relationship with the scientists I've worked with now for a long time, every day we would go out and record, listen together, and she kept saying, "You're teaching me so much, and you're teaching like I would never have access to this role." But this role, they were generous with us. I don't know. Yeah.
But I know that Ash also recorded a series of conversations with the beetle group, the folks that were focusing on beetles, and I went through and edited out some of the conversations and played that back at her open house last year. And one of the scientists reached out to me recently and said that interview was the thing that they were most proud of since beginning graduate school. And I think it was something about like hearing their own work reflected back to them in the kind of, we bring a sense of narrative and theme and right. And making some connections that I think they're so focused on the data and the grants and funding and how to, keep advancing within the track of science. So, yeah, there you go. That's good.